Well, hello, this is Brandon Farr, and today I want to walk you through camping stoves. This is a journey from where I started to where I've ended up and the reasons for each of these different stove types along the way. I want you to know that this isn't sponsored content. These are my stoves. Well, this one was my dad, and I grew up using this one, but every single one of these I have bought, in this one 17 years ago, and this one in the spring. This is my money. I put my money on things that I believe were valuable, and I've learned along the way that some of these things aren't going to serve me in the wilderness, and I want you to know the reasons why you should spend your money on each of these types of stoves, and this is also what I trust when I take people into the backcountry, and we got to eat when we're back there. So just want to dive right in. So here, just so I can get this off the table because it's drowning me here. This is a liquid propane stove, and we've come a long way from these big, heavy metal burner stoves. There's 3 burners on here, which never made sense to me because we only ever use 2. 2 pots fit on here, that one and that one. The middle burner has always been useless, but nonetheless, these things, they serve us, but they work really well on a picnic table because, frankly, they're so darn heavy, and you'd never take them camping when you have to use a backpack. So, stepping right in just for some context. This is an MSR stove. It's the Simmerlite. I bought it 17 years ago, as I mentioned, and it's a liquid fuel stove. And you're going to notice a very general transition. This is liquid fuel, and these are canister stoves going forward. Just to label them, this is the MSR Pocket Rocket. This is the Soto Windmaster 4. Picked this up in the spring. This is, oh man, this is an MSR. This is the exact same style of stove if you see it. This is the Simmerlite, but I think it's a Simmerlite, but as a canister stove. I bought this about 4 years ago, and this is the Jetboil Minimo. Super happy with this little guy, but let's walk into some logic, because what we're going to do today is talk about not just about stoves. This isn't just a review. They all work well. There's pros and cons to each. I'll tell you about those. But what I don't see in reviews is how to use stoves as part of a system. Because when you're out there, you're not just taking this piece of metal. You're taking pots. You're taking you need fuel. You need to light the darn thing. It's part of a system so that you can cook and have great meals in the backcountry, which is so much about the joy about being outside. And my whole point in making these videos is I want you to have a thriving experience outside. I find this isn't about survival, and so often these videos are about, what do you need in the worst case scenario, and it sets up this contrast to the great outdoors that doesn't need to be there, and because you can have amazing experiences. And the joy of cooking is something we can take to the outside, which is part of why I would say one of the biggest things I would like to correct right now is that all the metrics you're going to see online have to do with boil time. Is this 3 minutes and 6 seconds? Is this 3 minutes and 19 seconds? Is this 2 minutes and 7? It's the wrong metric. What you need is simmer ability. What I want you to know is these are all hot stoves. They're powerful. They throw off a ton of heat energy. They're measured in BTUs. They're hot. They cook fast. They all boil really well. But in reality, the difference between 3 minutes and 7 seconds and 3 minutes and 19 seconds for you in the wilderness is nothing. You're happy to have your warm cup of coffee in the morning. You're boiling your pasta for dinner. You're pumped. And you don't need to have fractions of a second shaved off. What you do need, I've discovered, is the ability to micro adjust your cooking temperature so that you can have amazing food and not just burn it to the bottom of the pot, which, I'll show you my pots later. There's some food cooked to the bottom of them that's been scraped off over the years. It cooks so hot, so fast that it's not useful for anything other than boiling water. And I feel like that's one of the ways I went wrong when I started my stove journey. So we're going to move across the table this way and then do some back and forth. But I want to start with this. This is liquid. This is liquid fuel. It's white gas, and the white gas has been in here. It's 15 years old, and I want you to know it's extremely flammable stuff. You crack the seal on this. Let's see. Yeah, it's a little there. Now, it's got a strong odor, super flammable, more flammable than gasoline. It's there, it's real, okay? What's amazing is that this MSR bottle with its little seal, as I splash this around, it's lasted that long, and it's just been sitting in my shed. And the reason it hasn't come outside in about 15 years is it's a pain in the butt to use. I want to walk you right into that. So it comes with this little pump thing. Now, when I was a wee little lad, my dad would take me out into the woods and we'd use these liquid fuel stoves, and he had they're the big Coleman ones, but you had the little pump thing on the end, and that was my job to keep the pressure up. Well, this MSR stove has the same thing. So here's what we do. You have to put the little filter in, you put the little snorkel in, you screw this on just like this. Now that's sealed. You can leave this on while you're camping. You put that in your backpack and it'll work, and then you pump it up just like this. Oh, got to close the valve or you're going to leak some fluid out. Now I want you, this is real time for me. This is a one-take video, but I want you to see how fumbly this is. Look, there's white gas leaking. If there was labels on things, it just corrodes them off. You see, I had written FAR on here because that's my name, and if any leaks here, it erases it. It's just super volatile stuff, which means it's super flammable. And you'll see in a minute here when I try to light this thing why I almost burnt my tent down. So I was cooking in the vestibule while I was winter camping. So there's a bit of a maintenance thought process that needs to go into using these, and I just want to contrast that in this moment to something like this. I just lit that stove, okay? So that's what's possible. Here we go. So with this stove, there's liquid in here, and now it's pressurized. The concept is that as higher altitude goes, as you go up in altitude, the ambient air pressure decreases, so you can keep pumping to keep maximum pressure, so you can be on top of Everest and still pumping pressure through your stove and light it and cook dinner. So in order to do that, you got the little valve system here. This lays on its side. It's got this little snorkel piece. I've been thinking about this video for a week, and in reality, you're supposed to spit on this right here, and it creates a little fluid gasket. I can't bring myself to spit on YouTube. Just picture what my grandma would say. So nonetheless, this goes right in here. This little clip flips right over the valve. Okay. Now I haven't done this in 15 years, but here we go. I want you to see just the similarities in design between these two. Okay. And again, I'm going to show you how I would do my lighters differently. We'll do this. That stove's now lit. Okay. There's nothing to light here yet. Okay. Get this out of the way. Okay, so now the stove is here. Now what's really important is you need to maintain pressure in this, which means as you cook, you're going to need to keep pumping it. You know, when you get to this point in the little valve, you push it in, it kind of pushes out, pushes back out, you're there. Again, this is how you're going to control this. There's a little tray here, and I'm going to explain what this pipe is here. This is a generator tube. So when the fluid's in here, it's liquid. It has to turn to gas in order to light, as you've been seeing. This sits here, blowtorch, right? But it lights because there's fluid in the bottom of this. You can shake it. There's air or vapor on top, and that vapor is what's escaping, and that's what's lighting. If you turn this on its side, it doesn't work because it doesn't burn fuel. Like, it doesn't burn liquid, it burns air. So how do you get liquid in here to air? Well, you turn the valve on. Oh golly, that's a lot. If I do that, it's going to make a big ball of flame. So I'm going to give it a minute. There's this little primer dish here, and you can see it's leaking onto the table. Again, I'm actually not going to light that. The idea is you put a very small amount of fluid in there and you light it with a lighter. Because this is a one take and because this is real life, and this is part of why I don't use this stove, I'm going to work with this just as it is. I'm going to take a moment and show you something about lighters. I wanted you to see just how hard this is. This is just a Bic lighter. I love these things. In contrast to this one. And what I've done here is I've taken the safety mechanism off of this lighter here so that I can very quickly light it. This one's more difficult. And in the context of the wilderness where you have cold hands and things are fumbly, this is actually a big inconvenience. So how you manage this is just a letter opener. Take this little ring out of here, pop it off just like that. That's all that it is. And now all of a sudden you have a lighter that works very easily when you're one-handed, very easily when your thumbs are numb and you're pulling your hands out of your pockets. This is still leaking. Again, we're doing this in real time. Okay, so, and here's just another thing. So I have lighters of all shapes and sizes. I got small ones and large ones. And when I was taking all my stoves apart, you know, this MSR stove and this one come in these bags. Every one of these bags, as I'm going through them, pulling my stuff out of my camping Tupperware, I got lighters. And the safeties are removed. Because that's just part of, when I'm in the wilderness, I never want to run out of the ability to light my stove, which is mission critical. Yeah, I'm wondering what I'm going to do with this in a little bit. Aha. Stainless steel. We're going to dump this fluid out. There we go, and that's going to evaporate really quickly. There is definitely an odor in this room. And I want to make sure that we're not going to... See, this is where you get this stuff on camera. So you got to crack the stove. Now there's fluid in the line because it's pressurized, but it takes a moment to leak there. And when you light it, it lights your table on fire. Okay, so what's happening here? And if you didn't get enough, you got to add a little more. Now you see that fire? It's real fire. Okay, now it's heating up around this ring, and that wire, picture this in a tent vestibule, but picture putting way too much fire on. And all of a sudden, creates a fire hazard. And you start to hear the sound difference. It's whistling. Okay. All right, here we are. It's not quite ready yet because you can still see yellow flame. But what's happening, the flame that kind of balled around is actually heating that pipe that the liquid fuel comes around. Now, as it's traveling around that generator tube, which I can show you here, it's heating up and vaporizing in this generator tube so that when it comes around, it then is gas and is able to come up through the top part of that jet. Here we are. Okay, so then as you're cooking, you put your pot on there and you cook away in the high alpine. As the pressure dwindled, you'd be able to just keep pumping this up and be able to maintain. You can hear it getting hotter and hotter and hotter. It's going to get very hot because there's no fluid in there. Managing your stuff. Now, one of the things that's also interesting about this type of stove is wind prevention. There's no real wind protection in the Alpine. So they create these things. And forgive me if the mic is picking up all of this metal stuff. This is real life for working in high Alpine stoves. Now, these windshields are awesome. They go right over your pot like this, and your pot would go in here, and they shield your stove, and they keep the heat up around the sides of your pot so you contain more of the temperature. Now, look at how hot this gets so quickly. It's smoking, okay? So this is part of the thing, that these stoves are so hot that boiling time is just a given. You're gonna boil water quickly. What you don't necessarily have is the ability to simmer and control things. I grew up, this was my pot set. When I say I grew up, when I was in my mid-20s and part of the outdoors club, and this is my cooking pot, and you got the pot grabber here, and park that on there, and cooked all my meals. This is how I did it. Still cumbersome, okay? You can also see that the bottom of this pot is super wonky because when you overheat metal, guess what? It buckles. And as I'm sitting there working the stove out, not sure necessarily how to manage it when I was in the beginning, things got super hot, pot got dry, or basically evaporated all the water and buckled the thing. So I don't know if you can see it well on the camera, but there is definitely a glowing redness to that generator tube. This stove is now fully hot, sealed. Again, that shroud would go over and isolate the heat from the stove from the temperature or from the fuel bottle, which is an important distinction because you can't take this stove in contrast and do the same thing around it. because if you did, you contain the heat, the fuel source is in that shroud of heat, and it can combust for you in a very non-good way when you're inside a confined cooking arrangement. You can just feel like this is real, folks. This is real fire. I'm inside, so I do have a fire extinguisher. I was thinking ahead on that. So then, your job, you shut this off. This is going to be very, very hot. It doesn't mean you can't separate. I'm going to let this, it's pulling the fuel out of the line. Again, this will be hot for a little while. Pot grabbers are a brilliant thing because they do allow you to move metal pieces. But just as we're looking at this stove, once this is done, I'm going to take it off the table and just give ourselves a little more space. This stove and this stove. If I was to put a pot on either and fill that with water, I want you to notice the stability. Okay, so this is lower to the ground. Think easier to manage. You know, the earth isn't a glass table like this. You're putting rocks under things sometimes to balance, and the lower it is to the ground, the lower the center of gravity. If this is full of water, there's several pounds of water in this, you're able to maintain better point of contact, okay? So that's also good, because up here, things can get a little wobbly, especially when your canister, the base of your canister really is the footprint of stability for your whole stove. And you can get smaller stove containers, or this is about as big as they get. Okay, so I'll take this off here. This propane stove, this is just heavy and archaic, so we don't ever want to use these in the backcountry. Now we're going to dismantle this. Move this aside. So you flip this little clip over, and then wiggle this aluminum tube out. There we are. Okay. Liquid fuel. Still in here, it's still liquid. It vaporized around the generator tube, but all that to say, okay, I hope you understand a little bit around the contrast. We can be cooking with gas, just like that, or we can go through the fiasco that I just went through with this liquid stove. I got this because I thought it was the most durable, bomb-proof, no matter where in the world I went, because I can see myself in the world of glaciers and doing some winter camping. I never wanted to not be able to cook. And I just frankly got it wrong, because on all my camping trips, especially the non-super extreme high alpine ones, I mean, these other stoves are totally sufficient. So here's a safety part that I think is understated. Okay, this is a pressurized container. And how do you take this off to put the cap back on? You do this, you twist top. Now, what's really important to know is it's going to blow fluid this way. Where's my hand? Right here. If it's minus 40 outside, the vapor that's going to come out of here is minus 40. White gas freezes at like minus 270 degrees Celsius, so it's almost 0 Kelvin that this will turn to ice. So it's always going to be liquid, but it'll be liquid to the exact temperature that is outside. And then then it's so volatile, it'll evaporate right off your skin so fast. So what this is in the wilderness, you're going to hear this, and it's got all over my fingers, instant frostbite. Instant, that fast. First aid, can't move my hands, froze the tips. It can become, oops, I just undid this, and become a mission critical first aid element in the wilderness in the winter. And that's just a real risk. So it has to be managed with gloves, and like it's so volatile, and it truly is dangerous. And so taking this out, I've learned to do this so it doesn't flick fluid in your face when you yeah. Why don't I use this stove? So lid back on, and we're going to get this well off the table and move right along. So again, this will have cooled off sufficiently now, but just in case, we use the pot grabber, bring it over, set it aside. A couple of things on that. You know, I took that in all kinds of places. This is the Expedition repair kit that came with that stove. I've never used it once. It's brand new. I've just never needed it. So again, when I bought the stove, I kind of went all in on all the accessories because it was a just-in-case scenario for me. Unless I was climbing Everest, I wouldn't need that stove, and I definitely haven't needed the Expedition repair kit, so I wasted my money on that. I have it, here it is, but again, it just sits dormant. And particularly, here's the thing, when I'm picking my gear, this is what I realized and why I ended up getting a stove like this, which was my next stove, if I was to give that to you to borrow on your camping trip with your friends, because I have the gear and I want you to go outside, think of the learning curve for you to comfortably use this stove to boil. You're groggy in the morning, you wake up, you want tea. Lunchtime comes along, you want to warm up your grilled cheese. Dinner comes along, you're thinking coffee before bed, but you're going to have some stir-fried vegetables. I mean, like, so you're back into the stove over and over again. It's a complicated process, and it's intimidating. And so I just went, I need a stove that I can give to anybody and they can turn on. And what's more to that is that this thing packs up. It does escape a little vapor when you open it. It packs up into this little container right here, and which makes it beautifully succinct and compact. And so you take your lighter, I'd take a compact, and there's my little setup. So if I have a 1.5 liter pot, I can say to you, my friend, enjoy your camping weekend, whether you're going overnight with your 30-liter backpack, it's in the bottom, or whether you're going multi-day with your 65-liter backpack, it's all right here. Everything you need to cook, which is absolutely brilliant. I would say this brings me to a section on pots, and I want to talk about that because you got pots of different sizes. So this is a 1 liter pot. This is a 2 liter pot. This is another 2 liter pot, and this is a 2.5 liter pot. The right size for you is the 2 liter and the 2.5 liter. These 1 liter pots are awkward because the fact is, even with your smallest kit, and the MSR Pocket Rocket's an awesome stove, and it's not my preferred stove now, but it doesn't work. So what ends up happening is you go, I want a smaller pot so I save space, but it's an illusion, because then when you go to pack it in your gear, you have to pack your 1 liter pot plus your fuel outside anyways, and so you're still at 2 liters. Like, so the ability to contain in your pot system is a super critical one that's often overlooked. So when you're buying your pots, I would say 2 liters and 2.5 liters. Like, these two stainless steel pots right here have served me from the top of mountains, whether I'm camping out on my truck, whether I'm taking a bunch of people and we're rock climbing and I'm just backpacking in for the day. This is what I bring. They nest nicely. My stove, my fuel, it's all there. It's all in my backpack, one unit. I found it to be absolutely brilliant. And again, thinking about pot lids, here's a nice little feature. I've upgraded to this pot because I've destroyed these in literal fires. Like, I put this in the fire because it's got a handle and I can put a little stick in, kind of like lean it in and cook some hot, like melt some snow or something. And I didn't want to do this to this pot, so I got a separate one. And the strainer on the lid is a really nice feature, so that as you're doing your pasta, and this does lock on here, but you can strain your pasta right out of there. That really matters, so you're not losing noodles, because every noodle's precious when you're in the wilderness. It just feels that way. So, and then I've also noticed that these stainless steel frying pan lids here, like they would sell this at the store. MSR sells stainless steel pots. These are Mountain Equipment Co-op stainless steel pots. They sell this as a 4-piece set. Pot 1, pot 2, pan 1, pan 2. I've never used these. I mean, I can see remnants of a couple of pieces as toast on here. It's never worked out that way. They are intended that the pot lids go on like this, but I always put them on like this. And I'm saying that because I still use pot grabbers. It's just, they're in, they're on. It just seats in like that better. If you try to, especially when it's hot, grab onto this and then see it, it's always been clunkier to me. So that's how it is. And then from this position, sometimes what I'll do is I'll use this. If there's fluid underneath this and it's boiling, this gets to be 100 degrees Celsius, and I'll use this as a little warming tray to keep to keep things warm. That's just what it'll do. In a bit that way, I'll double up on my cooking surface while I'm on one stove. But one of the reasons why I went away, and this is a big distinction for me, why I moved from the Pocket Rocket through to the Soto. I wanted to upgrade my Pocket Rocket is really what I wanted. And I started looking around at, I started at the Pocket Rocket Deluxe and different MSR stoves because I really did believe in them. You can see that I got 3 MSR stoves on the table and I went away from it. Let's start with, this is why I went away from this pot. I'm gonna see how these tines, they stick up. So they actually all angle in, which is absolutely nonsense to me because if I put my pot on there, you can see that it's like sitting on its tippy toes. And I hated that because what it meant is that as soon as I was off, and you gotta think uneven conditions here, like the risk of dropping dinner is real. And if you contrast that to this is the Soto, it's perfectly flat. So which means that the base of my pot has so much more support than the tippy toes. Now, this is a non-destroyed pot because I've learned how to melt snow. You add water to the bottom of the pot, but the base of this one is all contorted because the steel's flexed. All the more unstable here. Add to that some real life. This is water. And you can see how things move around when you're filling it up because there's momentum. And I found myself in some occasions cooking and feeling like I was going to lose my dinner. Now, and then when you're stirring things, picking up, and you put it back on, it's like there's movement here. I wanted a bigger, more stable base of support. That's what I wanted. So when I was picking the next one, I started MSR, but do enough reading and reviews, and you find out that the MSR, it still only has three prongs. They're just more elements that flip out. It like flips out and then flips out again. I don't like that. I love how simple this is. I love that it comes in a durable case. This was just part of the brilliance of the package. The deluxe pieces that just seemed more flimsy to me. But further to that, the piezo lighter, which is I'm going to do this here, which is this little guy, lefty, loosey, going backwards, which is that little button right there. It's not reliable on the MSR stoves. And I'm like, because that was, you go through the list of reviews, it's constantly or regularly failing on a certain percentage of stoves. And I'm like, there is a piece of resilience that you need in your outdoor gear because in some sense you're depending upon it. And I just didn't want to ever have it fail. Plus I wanted a flatter surface, and then I found Soto, and the idea of this just being super stable like that just really worked for me. So I went with it. I haven't even used it a ton, but I know that it works. Like I know that once you spend enough time using tools and equipment, you will tangibly know that it's going to work for how you use your gear. And you need to have a relationship with your things because it becomes second nature, which is why I always have a lighter in my right pocket. It doesn't have a safety mechanism on, so I don't even have to look at it. I know what I'm doing, and I know this. It's a muscle memory piece, which allows you to anticipate what gear is going to work well. So I knew from experience a flat surface with more tines was going to be more stable. And if I ever lost my lighter, because I was in a canoe and the pack flipped over, whatever the deal, and I lost my lighter, which would be unlikely because I bring several, but I have the option to do that. And then I thought of you, my friend, who I'm camping with. And I thought, what would work? A reliable secondary igniter would work better for you. So that's why I made the transition, and that's why I switched from MSR to Soto in this case. What Soto does not do as well as MSR is this little package. It comes with this little bag. Like, this is part of the brilliance of the original Pocket Rocket. This little thing is flimsy and whatever, and this little thing has these arms come off so that you can pack it as this shaft and then these. This is the other thing I don't like. These things are all flimsy, which makes no sense to me at all why they'd be so flappable. That I don't like at all. Like, that feels cheap to me. It's not going to fall apart. It just feels cheap. Whereas in contrast, there's a bit of resistance here. So you put them down, and they don't move. They're where you put them. That feels better. But the performance of this outweighs the characteristics of these. I just wish that they tighten these up. So that's those things. Case is now at my feet. Something to consider, again, just thinking about stoves, stove systems, and accessories. One of the things that I did do is when I bought my first canister stove, this guy, I went and spent some money, and this is a canister footprint extender. And what it does is offsets what we're talking about, like this stove, like this is it's lower to the ground and offers perhaps more stability. Okay. Also notice that these are also flat, so varying sizes of pans, everyone's getting good contact. Well, this works actually really well. What I've discovered is I never use it because I can typically carve the dirt out or stick it in something, or even find a flat surface, make this and then put this on, and so I can typically get a flat surface. And so I've carried this on many trips and never pulled it out of my bag. What's interesting, when we get over here to the Jetboil Minimo, you're going to see that they actually put one of these as plastic and they bake it right in here so you can pop it out, and it fits on every container. And it's just part of their system. And the fact is that I continue to pack this because I never want to be in a scenario where I have dinner perched on top of something and it's too unstable and it just feels like the pot's going to fall off. So I continue to pack it just in case I want a wide base of support. But the Jetboil just says, hey, we're going to make it easy. It's going to be part of our system. It's going to pack inside. You'll never have to worry about it. And I just really appreciate that. I'm going to see if we can do a little demonstration here of how hot these things get. Because I think one of the things that's not appreciated about these stoves is how much BTU potential is in these things. And people go, oh my goodness, I want max boil time. And I told you, I think that's ridiculous for all kinds of reasons. Here's my lighter, and here's another hack. On my lighter, I have 6 feet of duct tape. Fits in my hand. I have a wingspan of about 6 feet, so I tack it to the top of an open door, and I roll it up my lighter up the duct tape, so that when I'm in the wilderness, I have duct tape as a safety precaution, to strap some things together if I need to, patch if required. Use Gorilla Tape is what I'd upgrade to, these days, but it's just nice. It's nice to have. And here's another interesting part. It's also a fire starter. Pull off some duct tape, and I don't have any paper, because when you coincidentally, there's not much paper or cardboard that you pack with you in the wilderness when you're backpacking. A ball of this is actually quite flammable, so then you can just peel it off. As much as you need, good to go. It's always with you. Anyways, which brings me on the point of a fire starter. Anytime you have a stove, you have a fire starter. If I had a pile of sticks here and it was wet, I would dig a little cave underneath that, fire this under there, and I can put some sticks under it, and this blowtorch will light a fire. Now, you need to understand there's danger associated with overheating this, but when you have an infant fire, it's not going to happen instantaneously. Like, can you see the heating potential? And what I want is to demonstrate just how hard this is on your pots and pans. So if anybody needs to tell you, I don't even know if you can hear me, it sounds like a jet plane. Okay? What you need isn't boiling time. You need the ability to put that down right there and not destroy the vegetables you're trying to saute. So why didn't I stop here? Good enough, right? This is the Wind Burner 4. It's different than the Pocket Rocket. The answer is wind. Like, the wind is the one missing feature that this possesses, this type of stove, that brought me over here, that makes this better. Because if it's breezy, you can hear it. And if it's really windy, it's out. Just out. Of course, you can relight it. But it's amazing, and this back to that heat shield piece, it's amazing how when, and this is an empty pot, I should get that off the heat. It's just, you can, it's like an acetylene torch. You can weld stuff with how hot these are. So make no mistake about that, and always make sure there's fluid in the bottom of your pot. And this is how you wreck your pots. Because then you go do something silly like put cold fluid in it or take it to the creek and wash it out. And that's why the pot, you can hear the, it deflects the bottom of the pot. And that's how you get wonky bottoms. Now I've learned that on my basic pot set. This is stainless steel, and I would never get anything other than stainless steel. But it's why I'm going to treat this one, and any ones that I get, I'm going to treat them nicer. And again, stainless steel pots are better because you go down to the, they're just about as light as aluminum. We're talking fractions of it feels like fractions of an ounce heavier, but they're more durable. And you just go down to the creek or you grab some dirt and you can like scrubby pad, get them clean if you overcook some things. But anyways, that's how that works. Okay. Gotta be real here. I'm not distracted on this and then do something I regret later. Okay, so here we are. There's a vulnerability to wind. Soto comes along and says, hey, we have I'm gonna flip this open, wind burner 4, and they got this little lip here. I'm skeptical with how, like, is that the perfect solution? You're gonna watch it to something like this. And MSR has a version of this. So this is the Windmaster 4. I think that MSR has a wind burner or reactor system where you'll see the heat shrouds surrounding the burner actually protect it from the wind and also channel the heat up and around the stove. I just blew that out. So although this little lip is better than this, which is just an exposed head, it is not a perfect answer to windy scenarios. And again, because you can't put a heat shroud around this type of canister stove for risk of explosion, you're kind of stuck doing stuff like sticking your backpack up as a little windshield or things like that. So this is absolutely my favorite little stove system. It's the one that goes with me. You know, we talked about in the backpack on the trip, a couple of things. This is an aluminum pot. That's not bad. The heat shroud in here makes sure that I'm not losing temperature out the bottom of my pot, because this creates a super concentrated burn, but I'm also cooling the pot all the way around here. This captures the heat so it doesn't just fly out the sides and wraps it up the side. So I'm just getting a more complete heat transfer. Also, you can consider how much more significant this lip is at blocking wind than this little guy, which is still warm. So, and another added benefit here is this has a neoprene shroud on it. So it's almost like I would be skeptical to just grab this with boiling water because it would probably still be hot. But for those moments where you grab it in a moment, you're not going to get instantly scalded like you would here. But more than that, it's also going to act to maintain the temperature of your food once you stop cooking it. So your pasta, and this is what most people don't realize when they're cooking outside, is oh, I'm camping, what do I want? And they get these stainless steel pots or bowls, cooking like just bowls, plates, and things. And what they don't realize is that steel is so good at sucking heat out of things and then letting it go to the atmosphere. And you end up eating on metal things, metal plates, bowls, cups, and you end up having cold food, and very quickly, like within a matter of a couple of minutes. So that's why when I'm happy to use plastic in the backcountry, it's light, but it just, I find it doesn't get cold as fast, which means that this little blanket that they have makes it nicer to handle. It does have built-in handles, but it's also going to maintain the warmth of my food once I've done cooking it, because this, like all great pot lids, will have a strainer in it. So you can strain the water out of your pasta, stir in your sauce, your seasoning, good to go, it's good to go. And I like to use, this is a stainless steel spork. I have a titanium spork, same thing. This is just like my favorite little thing. Use this, and then you're good to go. Like meal in a meal in a cup. If I was solo, this is all I need. I wouldn't even need to bring this. If I'm camping with Rachel, I'm going to go, okay, well, here's one and here's two, and we can do it just like that. Another neat part about this, just from, again, we talked about instability here, this locks in. There's these little indents, sets in, locks. Okay, so that's wonderful. So now I can actually do this, and they make a hanging kit. If all else fails and you just can't seem to find that perfect stabilizing platform base, I'm going to let you look up online how to do this, but you can suspend the stove from here, hang it out of a tree. If you're hammock camping or rock climbing and you're suspended on a portaledge, it's all an option for you, which is just neat. I don't know. I got this just in case. Again, I'm one of those guys that's like, if I get it, I want to get all the accessories so I can use it to the maximum potential. This might be like that MSR Expedition Emergency Kit thing. Might never use it, but I got one. So can't comment on it at this point. But then this, again, further to refining my system. There's the little lefty is on that side. Little igniter right there. Again, you're gonna if you were to compare BTUs and buy a stove based on BTUs, bet you that's gonna win. I just using that common sense meter. Simmerability. I want to crank this right down because that's what I'm looking for. And it's interesting that, so they're both going to simmer beautifully. Just beautifully. But the difference between this and this, I will eat faster with this one because it will retain the heat, especially with the shrouds. And once you get this all in there, and I just don't want to melt this pot. So put some water in here. And I've been really impressed that the neoprene doesn't melt or anything like that. So put these here. That's out. That's going. Now that's out. I'll shut this gas off. Okay. So barring a direct gust, they're still going to go. This is absolutely more durable. This is warmer. This will keep your pot warmer anyways. So to me, this is the perfect system. And the missing piece, and because I originally I believe in MSR stuff. At least, 6 years ago when I was buying them, this was the one I bought 6 years ago. I had so much success with my Simmerlight. I love the concept of it, and it was just too complicated. And I moved away from it because it wasn't serving me with the complexity, and I wanted something simpler, but I believed in the stove. So I went and got this. We'll walk through this stove last here. So when I went to go get these contained stove systems where the base is compatible with the pot, and I'm like, okay, I'll do that. I actually bought the MSR. I think it's the wind burner. I believe it's the wind burner. But you got the pot and the stove system, and they're compatible, and it was awesome. But then the question I had is like, okay, so then you buy this and it's dedicated. What happens if I want to cook with this pot or a frying pan? Frying pan was what I was thinking because I want to saute some things. Again, gourmet cooking in the backcountry just because it's so much fun. If you don't have this proprietary thing on the MSR, you're hooped. Like the stove just doesn't work. You can't use a pot. And I've seen people that actually bought their, I think it's like $100 frying pan and cut the thing off here so they could put it in the stove system so they could put other pot. It all seemed like nonsense to me. Then I found out that included in this Minimo kit is this little adapter system here. What it does is allow you to put your, how are we going to do this? Oh, you got to start this way, I think. Anyways, this little dealie sits right in here beautifully and lets you put your pot here. And what it does sit. There we go. There's a bit of an energy when you're sitting here on camera, not wanting to fumble these things. And in this case, they can be hot. So, okay, so that settles down like that. So this pot can then sit on there and button. And you can cook just like that. Any pot, any pan, all the same principles apply that make this a valuable, wind resistant, simmerable stove. And I'm like, this is sweet. Jetboil nailed it. Add to the fact that MSR's piezo ignition just isn't super reliable. And I took it back. I got this. Super happy with it. Super, super happy with it. And just to clarify, the reason that is still hot, that you can't use, you have to do the separators because the burner is literally right there. So when you put the pot in, you're suffocating it. There needs to be a little bit of space for the flames to ignite and distribute. Otherwise, you're containing all the off-gassing right there too. So that's just part of why that works so well. Okay, so we've covered some things. Last one I'll show you is this, just because it clarifies some things that I think are important. This was, again, thinking this is more Everest scenario, and this is a beautiful stove. Works on all the same principles. Fuel comes out of this as a liquid, or sorry, interesting. In all of these containers, this is liquid. Liquid set it to the bottom. There's vapor on top, and that's what evaporates for you to cook out of. That's why when you tip the stove, it flares up. It just doesn't burn well. If you turn it upside down, it'll go out. MSR did do a brilliant thing here. And that brilliant thing was to include this, and I'll show you why this works really well. This needs to go here. Okay. So you're going to see, I'm going to light this stove, and then I'm going to flip it over quickly, and you're going to see it not work. Okay, it's going to do the same flare-up thing, but then we're going to give it a moment. So it lights like a normal stove, and then I'm going to flip this over. No, it's not happy, not happy. See, it's still gurgling because there's actual liquid that's getting stuffed through there, and it's got to evaporate in the chamber, and it just doesn't like it. Give it a minute. So again, when the container is the normal way, the gas is at the top. The problem is in the winter when it's cold and at altitude when it's high, the pressure difference between what's in the can and out of the can goes down, especially as you start to cook and you're burning fuel. So they said, all right, we still need the ability to turn liquid into gas. So they went back to that generator tube. And as that generator tube warms up, it maintains the ability to turn the liquid, because now liquid's at the bottom of this. And the liquid coming through the pipeline is vaporized in the generator tube. So now I can be on the top of Everest where this won't turn from, I'm using Everest as an example. I don't know what 32,000 feet does, but 8,000, 9,000 meters is still pretty high. Now the liquid that's coming out the spout is able to drain down the tube, vaporize, so you can keep cooking no matter what. And because this is a simmer light, which is why I bought the stove, so I've shut the valve all the way off. Try to turn this so you can see it. Moved. Oh. Restartability is there. So all the way open. I'm going to shut all the way off. So it's all the way off. It's still got fuel. So now I got to come back a little bit. So the stoves take a moment. So I haven't, there's a delay time in these. Oh, didn't get it. And that's about what you would get as a simmering pot here. You could do that. Again, nice wide base of support, low to the ground. I don't feel threatened that this is going to fall over. It's big. It's a little bit heavier. Yes, there's two components. Okay, here we are. Okay. Control it like this. But now we can go back in time. And again, use this. And minding the fact this is hot. This has a little port for the valve to go. And again, now I have full wind protection, a little bit of heat shrouding, simmerability at altitude, container stove, flick and play. Oh no, I'm running out of fuel. I have the ability to flip it over, drain my container, keep cooking, and it's so simple. I really like this stove. This is why I'm hanging on to it. I just really like it. It has all the attributes of what a wonderful stove system should have. It's still bulkier and more complex. Get rid of this. Than these very basic container stoves. Okay, so which is why when I go if I was to hike the West Coast Trail, I would take this. This is very hot. I can just feel it radiating and I do not want to burn myself. I would take this stove right here in its pot. It all bundles up. It's got a little bowl here that I've never used and I don't know that I would use. And I would take this guy. And together the two of them would be my redundant stove system, because I believe that between the two of these, I can go anywhere and do anything in virtually any environment. If I was going to go climb somewhere complicated in the winter, then I would move to something like this and this. So winter high alpine, these two. The other 99.997% of the time, it's going to be my Soto wind burner. Can't remember if I can put the medium-sized pot and the wind burner. Again, it's this weird little, it's just weird with these flappy little things. But you know what? In this case, and I always have a little lighter in my stove system, and that's what I'm packing. And I would say, hey, you're coming with me, okay? You get this one, put this in your backpack, and pack it in there. Save you the metal noise on the microphone. Pack it in there, you take that one, I'll take this one. We each have our own systems. I dedicate one of these. This would probably be a little faster boiling water. So this would be our coffee, tea, boiling drinking water. That's what we do with the one set of the stoves. The other one would be the cooking, regular, whether we're doing pasta or saute or whatever. We just have a cooking stove and a water stove, because it's typically the two work really well together in balance. If one stove goes out, we have a backup. We can do water and cooking on the other one. If we get separated for whatever reason, you have a stove, I have a stove, so no one's isolated. Because you got to think, like, even if you had this, and this is why I gave this away to my friend. I said, put this in your Jeep because you're out in the wilderness. If you have this, you can cook. So there's no reason why almost everybody, whether it's the Pocket Rocket Deluxe, the Soda, it doesn't matter. Like, you can survive with this. So everybody should have one that's on the trip, if you know, kids aside. But I see no reason why. And these are so cheap. I think they're like 65 bucks or something in Canada. So we're probably like 20 bucks in America. But yeah, that's the logic. And I use this, and this is something else, just as a little hack, my water bottle. My water bottle is soft. And the reason being is because as I use it, it gets smaller. And I want you to think about your backpack, okay? You're confined not by, you can be a strong person carrying all kinds of weight, but you're confined by size, in this case 65 liters. And there are some things that you cannot compress. Your rigid, hard items. A fuel container is a fuel container. You know, that's why it's neat when you can nest them. I find you run out of space more than you run out of the ability to carry. And I used to take Nalgene's, but the problem is whether Nalgene's full or empty, it still takes up this much space. And as I use this, it takes up a fraction of the space. When I'm totally done with it, you roll it up and it's nothing. And I've just found this to be a really nice hack when you're in the wilderness again, so that take up space if you need it. Strap it to things on the outside if you need to, or the water holder on the side of your backpack. But just think light and flexible, as distinct from rigid, because what isn't communicated, and this is what I was getting at, is that you're in the wilderness and you have so many things to think about, because most of us don't spend it's not our natural or most frequent element. And by putting together things that work together in little packages, we make our life super simple, which is why I'm happy to spend a little bit more on a pot that has a non-slip base, so that just in the event that I'm cold or rushing or the wind blows, my meal doesn't slide off, just because that would be tragic. And doing things like wrapping duct tape around your lighter, because it's essentially free real estate. Do I have a Bic lighter in my pocket at all times? Yes. With a small camping knife or a Leatherman? Yes. So I have it on me. So if my backpack goes down the river, I come out of the river with a camping knife and a Bic lighter in my backpack, because I'll have a secondary lighter. With my first aid kit, I got it wrapped in duct tape so that I could strap together some things that I want to strap together. Just simple things to consider. Because you can do these elegant touches and just make sure that you're comfortable in the backcountry. Now, we've covered a lot of territory. I feel like I shared a lot of the things that I didn't know when I started. I didn't have any, but I figured this out trial and error. I just spent hundreds of days outside, taking lots of people and seeing where people were comfortable, people were uncomfortable, and because if we're going outside together, I want you to have a great experience, and I want you to be able to share your great experience with others. So avoiding complications, having systems, paying a little bit more money for a system that is together, that it's all here. You don't gotta patch it together. Anybody can use it in a variety of circumstances, and when you give them a little system, it's complete. And again, like I threw my extra little lighter in there. It's every stove package has a lighter, because this can be a bowl, a pot, or even a cup. It's got a thing. I've never drank my morning coffee out of this, but it'd be possible if you had to. So simplicity sometimes is beautiful. Just don't need to sacrifice elegance or durability, which is again why I went and just made a couple executive decisions to upgrade. So with that, thanks for joining me. Wow, that's like 56 minutes. It was a comprehensive tutorial. I've been sitting here for a week thinking about what do I wish I knew 15 years ago. Here it is. So if you stuck with me so long, I hope you have many great days outside, and all the best.